All right, we're back. So today's guest is Dr. Antonella Schwarz, an assistant professor of exercise science whose work centers on exercise physiology and the science of human performance. Over the course of her career, she's worn many hats as an athletic trainer, a strength and conditioning coach, a researcher, and educator. So she really brings a very unique and well rounded perspective to the field. She's also deeply engaged in the professional community, contributing to organizations such as the American College of Sports Medicine, the International Society of Sports Nutrition, the National Strength and Conditioning Association, and the National Athletic Trainers Association. Today, we're going to be digging into her research on skeletal muscle hypertrophy, exploring how training and nutrition strategies can help and optimize human performance, and discuss how to bridge the gap between scientific evidence and practical applications for athletes, coaches, and all active individuals alike. So with that, Antonella, welcome to Simple Science, and thanks so much for being here early on a Friday morning.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So I'm curious, what's your background like in exercise science, strength and conditioning, athletic training? I mean, you've
Yeah,
really kind of done it all.
I have. And it was not really on purpose, actually, which is so funny that it all ended up kind of working out and kind of working together. But I originally went into undergrad. I remember the day that I got accepted to the University of Florida. I was so happy. I was like, I'm going to be an orthopedic surgeon. That was my big aspiration. I was like, I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be on the sideline of big football games and I'm going to fix people when they're broken. And that was my original plan. I went to undergrad as pre-med, and I just think like mingling with people, I realized like, wait a second, that is a lot of schooling, and that is some serious devotion and dedication. And I've always been like, family is really important to me, and I knew from the get-go, like I want a family, and I know that it's possible to do both, but I think in that moment, I was like, okay, I feel like I need to figure out what's like high on my priority list and kind of reorganize my goals based off of that. So I did that. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to try physical therapy. And I think I was like a freshman, sophomore at this point. So then I kind of changed up my major. I didn't really have to change much. Um, but I kind of took this separate trajectory and I was like, okay, well, if I do want to go to physical therapy school, Florida has a really cool athletic training program. Maybe I should do that before, set me up for that. And so I did that, got in, I was in AT, and I realized pretty quickly on after I did my physical therapy clinical rotation that I did not want to be a physical therapist. They're amazing, but it was just not for me. And after I did my rotation, I was just like, you know what, this is definitely not the track for me. And at this point, I had already done some competing in bodybuilding, and I loved the gym. I was like a little gym rat. So I was like, you know what? I didn't even know the strength and conditioning world really existed, honestly, before college. And I was like, wait, I want to be that. Like, I want to be in a weight room with people. Um, so that's when I was like, okay, what if I do like ATC CSCS route? And so that was my focus going into like my junior, senior year. I was focused on that. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be in the weight room with an NFL team. It's going to be awesome. And eventually, I graduated. I knew I didn't want to be an ATC based off of my clinical rotations as well. So I knew that I was like, okay, I want the credential and I want the ability to like diagnose people and work on people like kind of in this orthopedic sense, but I don't want to just work for one team as an ATC. So I knew that. So I was like, okay, I'll get my CSCS my senior year when like you can sit for it as like a spring senior in undergrad. So I did that, great. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna get my master's. Florida had a cool APK program. I'll do my master's and that'll set me up to work, with a team. So I was doing that and I ended up getting a job out in Colorado under Steve Hess, who's such an awesome guy. He worked for the Denver Nuggets. He was like their sports performance guy for like 20 years. And so I learned a lot about like pro sports and working with Gen Pop and college and all that fun stuff. So then that was an awesome experience, but I also knew by like year two that it really wasn't something I was willing to spend the rest of my life doing. I loved it and I could see myself doing it almost like part-time or here and there, but I also just realized like, wait a second, this might not be what I want to do with the rest of my life. And that's when I really began to think about academia and research. I hadn't even liked research, like even in my master's program or anything. So it was scary because I was like, okay, I mean, I feel like by the time you're ready for a PhD, you already know some kind of research, you already have some publications maybe. And I definitely did not. So it was a daunting idea, but yeah, I just went ahead and did it because I was just thinking, or I just remember like my Instagram was full of people who had PhDs because I always wanted to learn. I've always had this like thirst for knowledge. And I remember being like, and I'm also, okay, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent, but
No,
I'm
this
also,
is perfect. These are like 10 talking points that we're going to bang
oh
into. This
yeah,
is
yeah.
great.
And I'm also like a first generation American. So in my family, in college student. So in my family, a lot of people just have not gone to college. And so I never grew up knowing what really my options were. And so my family, nobody had ever really talked to me about a PhD or research until I got into like undergrad, master's. And so it's like, okay, this is all really new to me and it's exciting and I have no idea what it is. And so that's when I started to explore the idea because I looked up to a lot of PhDs and I'm like, wait, I kind of want to be like them. Like I love what they talk about. And I've always been a critical thinker. So I was like, this could maybe like quench my thirst for knowledge. And yeah, that's what led me down that rabbit hole. And here I am today.
Oh, it's so great. Like, I wonder how many people can also share that exact same like intro as you, where you were like, oh, I came into college and I wanted to be a doctor. And then they're like, oh, maybe athletic training, maybe PT, maybe teaching, maybe research. And it's like you kind of bounce around to anything that deals with anatomy and physiology and even performance and maybe even nutrition and maybe even helping people. And it's like the ATs who really seem to love the joints and the PTs who really seem to love getting people back on their feet and the strength and conditioning people who really love performance. It's like you kind of do all these things and then you kind of see like, well, what's gonna scratch the itch and how
Yeah.
can I have a family, have some time, have some money. What about when you first got into college? What was it about like the whole pre-med track that you were like, maybe yes, maybe no? Did you start taking chem and bio and organic and stuff like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. I see the prerequisites and I'm like, oh God, physics too. Like for even PT schools, like physics too. I don't really care about physics that much. I don't love I mean, I like biomechanics, but I don't love biomechanics like that. So a lot of those prereqs too, I was like, yeah, I don't really know if I want to spend time and money doing that. And just, I don't know. I think I really like you get ideas from like some of your older classmates and older peers, and kind of like some of them are in the hustle and bustle of rotations and applying to med school. And I don't know. I just think I realized quickly that that might not be like the lifestyle for me. Um, that was really it. It was just like, I don't want to be in school forever, but here I am having been in school forever. And I wanted a little more of kind of like a, maybe like a holistic approach to human health. And I really loved exercise and I really loved the gym. And so I think that that was really eventually how I figured out maybe I can do something else.
Did you find that when you were starting your bodybuilding journey
Mhm.
that you were also incorporating what you learned in class and maybe you had like these own hypotheses in your mind of like, well, maybe if I do this. And I feel like with bodybuilding there's like independent variables that you can test in the
Yeah.
way of nutrition, hydration, different exercises, sets, reps, intensity, rest times. Like there's so many independent variables. Instead of like going to the gym and saying I want to crush this, you go, there's 15 different things, and if I change it week by week by week with an intelligent periodization program, I can look and feel the way I want to do. Did you also have like a similar experience?
So I wish I did, but when I competed in bodybuilding, I really didn't know anything about human performance at the time. Like I was just kind of a meathead. And that really led me to wanting to know more because I just remember thinking, like, how does my coach know this? Like, how do these people know this? Like, and then it works. And you're like, how? Like, how? What's the science behind this? And I've always been that kind of kid, like, that kind of person growing up all the time. Like, why? How? Like, explain. I've always wanted to know the mechanisms behind things. I don't know why. I just do. And really, that's kind of what led me to study exercise science because I was like, wait, I love muscles and I love science and I love performance and I love sports, but I want to know why. And look at this, there's a field that literally encompasses all of this, which I hadn't even known about before college, truly. So, yeah, that's really how I got into that. But I didn't know when I was bodybuilding. I think it would be so cool to actually combine the two and like people who still currently like train for bodybuilding and compete and are scientists, I think it's so like that you've got to be like your own walking science experiment. That has to be so fun.
Well, that's, I think now, like, we're kind of getting into this age of evidence-based fitness. So with like running is huge and bodybuilding is big and supplementation. I mean, we run in the same circles with respect to strength conditioning and sports nutrition, which is amazing. So we're
Yeah.
all kind of on like this wavelength of like, huh, does this work? Is this efficacious? Is it cost effective? And it's funny because I think now more so than maybe 10 years ago, people want to see like, is there scientific evidence with respect to different exercises and splits and programming? So I think like this is the infancy right now. And you had brought that term, holistic. And
Mhm.
it's like, ooh, this isn't just a one component thing. So what is that? How do you practice that, or how do you teach that with your students, that
Yeah.
holistic approach? Because like you set the example now.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I think while I didn't have like the background to kind of treat my bodybuilding like a science experiment, nowadays I do treat all my training like a science experiment. Like I'm the first to pilot, like when I ran my MyReps study, I was the first to pilot that. Like I am always thinking about like my runs and how like this affects this, and what if I change this, and what if I move this. And so now I do that, maybe not so much in like the bodybuilding hypertrophy sphere, but really in the other performance side of it all. Um, and it's just like you said, it's like this kind of multi-dimensional um, craft that I tell my students all the time. Like I used to think it was strength, power, speed, endurance, but the more you like look into the research, you do the research, you experiment on yourself, you realize that like it's not just physical, it's also cognitive, psychological, things like sleep, nutrition, stress. They all matter and kind of move the needle. And you could be like the fittest person on the planet, but if you are right not getting adequate sleep, you're really stressed, maybe your cognitive function is down, that's gonna mess you up, right? And if you were to get on the field with someone who's just as fit as you, but they had all those other things in check, they're going to outperform you, right? So it doesn't always come down to just physical fitness. And that's kind of how I try to teach that, is that human performance is like this multi-dimensional thing that you've got to kind of hit all the points. And again, like treat it kind of like this holistic goal, instead of just like, I want to get bigger, I want to get stronger, I want to get faster, which those are awesome and definitely like the focal-ish point, but I think our industry is expanding and we're seeing a lot more interest in like cognitive function and how that affects performance. There's a big push in the world of like endurance with like physiological resilience. That's huge right now. I know Dr. Jones just published a really cool paper about all that. And even like psychological resilience and how those play into a role in human performance. So yeah, that's kind of how I try to teach it, is like, I want you guys to think outside of the box. It's not just speed and strength. There's a lot more to it.
Are your students on board with that?
Yeah, they are. A lot of them are. We have a sports psychology program, and it's a really
Oh,
great program.
wonderful.
Yeah, it's a really great program at Barry, and a lot of the students are interested in it. And so I get a lot more, um, like, I don't know what the right word would be, a lot more like interest than I thought. Because I just even like a year or two ago didn't care as much for the psych part of it. I was like, feelings. Like I prefer like, the numbers and the physiological stuff. But now I'm like starting to realize, wow, it's really important. And a lot of my research is kind of heading in that direction, especially like the sport nutrition, supplementation stuff. So um yeah, I actually get a lot more interest than I originally thought. I was like, these kids are not going to care about this, but they do, which is so cool to see. I think it's like the next big field. Yeah.
Do you think that, like, do you have all undergrad? Do you have master students as well? Even
I
doctoral students?
I have mostly undergrad. I taught a grad level strength and conditioning class last semester in the spring, and then I have a GA. So I don't teach any of her classes actually, but she helps me with a lot of research and whatnot. So yeah, and also her interests are a lot more to like the cognitive side of it, and how like, caffeine might affect performance, but looking at like the cognitive measures and whatnot. So it's so interesting how like this new wave of, at least in my demographic and area, a lot of people are interested in cognition, which I didn't even realize was a entry point until kind of recently.
It's funny because there was, when I was at Rutgers for my undergrad, I had one professor who was a sports psychologist by trade, and
Yeah.
he would just teach like general exercise physiology and stats for exercise physiology, but he was like a sports psychologist, and his name was Dr. Fagley, and you could like read all his like old stuff from like the
Yeah.
60s, 70s, and 80s. And he was like, yeah, this is kind of a dying field. And he told that to us in like 2013, 2014, 2015. I was like, oh man, that's unfortunate because I would love to get into that. And like now I'm seeing a resurgence with
Yeah.
that idea of like resilience. And that's huge. And like when I was running a bulk of my marathons and my ultras, I felt like I didn't know who to tell, but I was like, hey, like this is making me just a more confident, strong, and focused person. If I can run 3 hours a day every day during my PhD to just train to get ready for 100 miles or 50 miles, I'm like, that is like a drug that no one else is taking.
Yeah.
So what's your take on like the whole resilience piece? I didn't know we were going to get into this. I'm like, now I'm excited. Like this is
No,
great.
it's so awesome. One of my mentors, Dr. O, he is so awesome, and he is very much into like the endurance research world, and so he's kind of like bringing me into that a little more too. And we've got this upcoming project, and he's really interested in the physiological resilience because, right? I mean, you put two people on a starting line that have equal VO2 max capacity, and one person's going to outperform the other. And a lot of people are asking, well, why? Like they're both just as fit. And so I think this concept of like physiological resilience, like who can go for longer, even with the same fitness, and then psychological resilience, how does that play a role? We're looking at like this grit scale, and having like competitive runners answer this grit scale to see if it has any kind of relationship with their VO2 max and or like race times. And so it's really cool, and it's a really interesting concept, and it's hard to differentiate how much of it is psychological and physiological. And I think that's kind of like what that bubble of research is trying to figure out is what is physiological resilience? How can we determine it? How can we train it? And then how much of it is actually psychological? And it's so interesting to me, especially in the world of endurance, because we know how right like mental that all is. So that's kind of another little area I'm starting to tap into with him, which is truly fascinating. But yeah.
Well, it's like the phenomenon when people think that they can't finish a race
Yeah.
and they're like dogging it and they're cramping up and they're hanging their head. And then like the finish line is like a quarter mile away and they start sprinting. And you're
Yeah.
like, where did that come from? Or
Right.
you hear stories about people running 200-mile races or something just insane. And it's just like, oh, in my last 20 miles, I was running at a 7-minute clip. And you're like, what? And it's like, they're like, I don't know how I did it. And it's like, you kind of think about all like the neurotransmitters and hormones, which might like then have some sort of like huge stimulus because you have this idea in your mind of like, okay, now it's time for me to really book this. And there's that positive reward at the end if I can actually see that instead of me just imagining it.
Totally.
And I always kind of wonder if you can keep tricking yourself into thinking like the finish line is just right there with like those like tiny little wins. If you can trick yourself, maybe that's the answer. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm
It's
excited to see what
fascinating.
happens.
It's fascinating because, like, I mean, you obviously are an avid runner. I'm not like a crazy runner like you, but I do love to run. And it is so wild to me. I try to explain this to especially new runners, or like I have clients that are like, I want to start running. I'm like, okay. And they're like, I want to sign up for this 5K. I'm like, okay, this is probably your target time. They're like, I could never run that fast. I'm like, you just wait and see on race day. Your paces are so different from what you can hit like in training. And trying to explain that to people, they don't see it. They're like, I could never run that fast. I'm like, just wait. Something magical happens on race day, and your race day paces they're just different. And I love that about running. I love that about running. So
How is that mixed with, are you still competing in bodybuilding or still just like lifting weights, or how does that
yeah,
mix? I think now there's a lot of hybrid athletes too. And it's
yeah,
just like we're seeing these very strong, jacked people in the gym wearing On running shoes. And I'm like, wait, what? You threw out your Converse, now you're wearing the Ons or the Hokas. So what's that look like for you? I've never competed, but like any other exercise science student, I lift a ton of weights, but I've never been on stage. So I'm excited to hear what that's like.
yeah. I no longer compete. That was a cool like 2 year stint. It was fun. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about like the actual grind of hypertrophy and like how there's really a simple process to gain muscle. Um, And if you can't follow that, then you probably won't gain the muscle. And so it's interesting how people try to make it a lot more complex than it is because I was like, I've literally been there. I've done that. Like I know what it takes and it wasn't that complex. It was not easy, but it wasn't some magical science like some people make it out to be. Um, but yeah, I don't compete anymore. I now just run for fun. Like I train for random 5Ks, half marathons. That's kind of my favorite distance. I've run a full marathon and I was just like, I don't know if I'll ever do that again. The training is like a full-time job. And I made the mistake of running the Miami marathon and it happened to be on like the hottest January in like the last 10 years. So it was miserable. So that probably scarred me. But um,
When did you run it?
2023, I think. So it wasn't last year, but the year before that. January, I think, of 23 or 24. I can't remember.
Yeah, I paced that one in
You
I
did?
think 24 and I had heat stroke.
Yeah. Okay. So,
It took me 6 months to recover. I went to the cardiologist, I went to the neurologist, I went to get blood work. I had heat stroke for 6 months. I was out for the count. It was
okay.
horrible.
I think it was this. Okay. You know what? Now I'm going to look it up on my phone and I'll get back to you. But I'm pretty sure it was the 24 one. Because, yeah, it wasn't this past year, but it was the year before that. So almost like 2 years ago, but technically last year then because it's 24. But I think we ran the same one. Like, did you get an email the night before that said heat advisory, don't plan to PR tomorrow, essentially?
Yeah, and then like the morning of the race, like they funnel you around the Miami Heat Stadium for like 2 or 3 hours, and they're
Yes.
like blasting music, and at the same time they have like those like flags of like it's hot, it's really hot, it's super hot.
Yeah.
And I was standing in the corral for 2 or 3 hours before I paced, and I realized I didn't pee in like 3 hours.
Oh my gosh.
And I had like sweat right here, I had sweat right here, and I went, oh boy. And then yeah, I had heat stroke, and it was the worst experience of my life. I was just
Horrible.
like, can we just go one of two ways with this? Either I'm gonna live and be fine, or just like this is the. It was just it took me 6 months. It was crazy.
I'm so glad that you were there because
I'm vindicating you. Yeah.
yes, I tell people this and they're like, "Well, you're dumb. You ran a marathon in Florida." I'm like, "It's normally cool in January. Like I've run that half marathon before and my mom runs that marathon every year. So I'm there every year and it's never been that hot. Like it's never
Yeah.
ever been that hot." And so people are like, "You're dumb. You ran." I'm like, "I swear I didn't mean to." But I just remember running and seeing people dropping like flies and seeing the little ambulance on the carts and the golf
Hmm.
carts every mile and I'm like, "This is unreal." And I think it scarred me. I was like, I don't know if I could ever run another marathon, but yeah, basically now I train for 5Ks and half marathons. Those are my two favorite distances. I ran the Kiowa half last year. I'm gonna run like a breast cancer 5K next month. Um, and I lift weights because I love lifting weights. So I kind of try to mix the two. Yes, I would consider myself, I guess, hybrid. Have you seen those memes about being like this hybrid athlete? It's kind of like an average lifter, shit runner. That's like it's the truth. It's kind of like you try to be like you still try to maintain all your strength you once had, but then you're also kind of like this like kind of crappy, maybe better than average, but still kind of crappy in the world of running. So that's what I consider myself now is like strong, runner, but I still do both.
Do you prioritize one over the other? Like if you had to pick like okay, like I have a really busy day today and I can only do one, what do you do?
Depends on my goal. So I'm super goal oriented and I need to set like objective goals to adhere to like my training. So like right now since I'm training for the 5K, I'll run first. I'll always run first. Like yesterday I ran in the morning, then I lifted at night. Um and I knew that if I didn't get my lift, it was no big deal. But I had to get my run in. But then like this past summer, I was training for strength goals. So if I could fit my run, I would. And if I couldn't, no big deal. But I would always get my lifts in. And I was trying to hit like a 315-pound deadlift. Didn't happen, but hit 300, but not 315. But then, yeah, so I kind of just like set a goal that might take me 8, 16, 25 weeks to reach. And then I work backwards and I plan backwards based off of that. So,
You'll go 6 months for a goal?
yeah, yeah, that was my deadlift goal. I started that January and I was like, okay, by the end of the year, I'm gonna try and hit that. And I was like, wait, I think I'm getting closer. I think I can hit it sooner. So then by August 1st, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try and hit it by August 1st. And I failed, but I hit 300. So I'm like, I'm happy with that. On to the next goal. And then I was like, okay, I want to PR my 5K. So that's what I'm working towards now.
That's incredible. 300 pounds. Was that with
Thanks.
a straight bar?
Yeah.
Oh, go for the hex bar. You can easily
Oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah,
come
yeah.
on. Like I don't know, like I did the day after I ran this 100K ultra,
That's
I did 4 sets of 6 with 405 with no belt. And
that's
it was the morning after 100K ultra marathon and it was like easy and then I squatted and deadlift and squatted and benched afterwards. It was a hex bar. But I was like Who cares? It's 405, man. I repped it. It's like, so there's no
No,
shame in using the hex bar or trap
no,
bar.
for sure. No, for sure, for sure. But yeah, it's fun. Like I'm so goal oriented, so I need to set like I have to be training for something to get my training in. So I just know that about myself, and so I always like, okay, I'm gonna pick a goal. How long do I think it could take me? And then I work backwards and I program from that. Or like I pay for programming because I always say every coach needs a coach. So it just depends on what the goal is.
That's super interesting.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't know, because like you said, you've coached and like I coach, and I feel like most people in exercise science, we all like have our own clients and stuff. And I just started doing that where like I did my own programming since I was 15. And I
Yeah.
was like, nah, I got it. And then as I took classes and as I did research, I just learned more and more and more. But then I was like, this type A personality that got me into this position right now also has gotten me injured. And I'm like, maybe someone who is has a different perspective can help me with this sort of thing. So now I kind of defer at least my strength and conditioning, like my actual weightlifting periodization,
Yeah.
to like other sources, because I'm like, I don't trust myself to not be like, oh, I'm an athlete, I can do 10 sets of this. I'm like, no, 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 like you can do 3 clean hard sets and three's enough. You don't need to do
Yeah.
German volume training, like you're fine.
Yep, yep. I feel the same way. One, you can just learn from other people. I learned so much from other coaches. Like, just how would they program this? And oh, that's so interesting. Oh, I've never seen that exercise. So I just like take it as a learning experience and just the mental offload. Like, it takes something off my plate. I don't have to think about my programming. There's no bias, and I have that accountability factor where okay, I've got to show up because this person is like looking at my log. They're looking at my training, and I'm not going to let them down because I would never, can't. So my friend right now, she is, Jose's daughter, Brandy.
Oh,
She's
right
a
on.
PhD student at UCF, and she's doing my running programming right now. So she can see basically every run that I do or don't do. So I'm like, okay, she's watching me, so I need to make sure that
Yeah.
like I'm getting everything in and doing it right. So yeah, I'm always looking to outsource coaching because I learn so much from people. I do probably do a lot of my strength and conditioning just because it's fun for me and I like to experiment with it. But there definitely have been seasons like just last year where I sign up for someone's program because I'm like, I want to see what this is about and I don't want to think about my training. So
It's interesting too, because like we first started off, I don't remember if we were recording at this point or just chit chatting before, but talking about this idea of like a type A personality and being high agency and just saying, hey, like I can do anything I want. And you don't really think about like the costs associated with it. And I think that part of being an honest and almost like a creative scientist in a way is just thinking outside of that box and that box and that box. And you're like, huh, what am I not seeing here? So like I don't listen to health and fitness podcasts. I listen to like stoicism podcasts and finance podcasts and self-help podcasts. And
yeah,
I don't know, just like, I want to see different people in different angles. Sometimes I'll listen to like all the Malcolm Gladwell stuff of like history. And like with that, like, I don't know, I feel like you need, depending on the season, you might need help or you might need to see something differently. And with exercise science, like I thought, for example, that, you know, if our effective rep ranges, specifically if you're maybe hypertrophy is like 5 to 30 reps, I'm like, why don't I just save my time and just do 5, 6, or 7 reps? And then more recently, I'm like, well, that causes a ton of systemic fatigue. It causes overload on joints. Your sets are cut short. Sometimes the reps aren't super clean. And I'm like, well, maybe if I focus on more of like the stimulus to fatigue ratio, maybe if I do one top set, things can kind of like mix up a little bit, focus on the metabolic stress and tension as opposed to just like repping out. And it's just, I don't know. I didn't know if like any of that made sense,
no, it
but
does. It literally is like the cornerstone of my research is it's multifactorial. So everyone gets hung up on like this is the best way to train, this is the best way to build hypertrophy, this is how every bodybuilder should do like this exercise. Like you got people on YouTube ranking S tier, A tier, B tier exercises. Like
yeah,
it's
it's the
not.
hottest thing right now. It's like Jeff Nippert started it, and now
Yeah,
everyone's just copying him. And they do it
it's
with finance. Like this is the best AI based job. S tier, A tier. I'm like, stop
yeah.
with the tiers.
Stop. It's not that black and white. And like you said, like for some people, maybe you're doing a ton of volume, like, on the pavement, you're running a ton. And so you're going to keep the volume in the weight room low and you're going to keep the intensity high. So maybe and maybe hypertrophy is not your goal, right? So maybe it's more so like that strength that you're chasing since you're kind of diminishing that. in general with your training goals. So maybe for that person, it looks like, okay, to maintain and to still be strong and to maintain my muscle mass, I'm going to lift in that like 4 to 6 range. But then for somebody else who's in their off season, who's like, okay, maybe I would like to put on a pound or two of mass, I'm going to hang out in that, 6 to 10 region. Like, I don't know. Right. So it's so like just context dependent. And that's really what I like have figured out is wow, like there's no, oh my gosh, I actually remember being an undergrad and thinking, how will I ever learn all of like the ways that like you could cause this injury and all of the ways that you could detect this injury and all of the ways that you could like rehab this injury. um and then I quickly realized, not quickly, it actually took me a while, but it's not that black and white. A lot of it's just like mush and you're figuring out as you go, and there's no like perfect blueprint. Like, I mean, you get like, this is the ACL protocol, this is how you build muscle, this is this protocol, and it's not that black and white. And that's honestly freeing because it frees your brain up of having to remember all of these processes and like, okay, so step 1 is this, month 2 is this, month 3 is this. Like, you don't have to remember that because it's in the real world, it doesn't work like that. In your textbook, it looks like that, but you don't have to remember that because it's like the concept that you apply to the context that like moves the needle, and every situation is so different. So that, when I realized that, was so freeing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't have to remember all of these protocols or remember all of these like ways of training or remember that hypertrophy is 8 to 12 and strength is 4 to 6. Like, I don't have to remember that because it's never really going to be that simple. And that's when I was like, wow, okay, I'm a new person now.
Do you think that maybe that's why you got a little bit away from maybe athletic training and physical therapy? I mean, obviously it sounds like you're incredibly curious with respect to like performance, and you're like, oh, what variables can work? And AT and PT are a little bit more of like the preventative and then the rehab side, which is awesome, but like it's not as like experimental.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I found that too because I was a PT aide for like 2 years, and I spent a lot of time in PT offices, and I just like talking with people, but I didn't really care about like reducing lower back pain. I was like, this is so boring. I was like, I want to talk, but like I don't care about like your knee osteoarthritis. It was just one of those things. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, no, that is definitely the reason why I quickly knew I did not want to go in either of those fields, because I just, I feel like since I've always been so curious, the clinical practice just like didn't quench my thirst. It was just like, you do this because somebody injured this, and that's it. Like, this is what we follow. Like, this is the protocol. And then I'm asking myself why. Or like, this is how we reduce scar tissue. We take a metal Graston tool and like scrape it against someone's patellar tendon. I'm like, what? Like, in my brain, I'm like, how, like something's not lining up here. Like, what's the difference between that costs $500 or like a metal spoon, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking like, interesting, like why? And then you would ask these questions and like nobody could answer them, or they would get offended. And I'm like, okay, like I just want to know. Like, and then I've like realized like this is also such a lucrative business. Like, there's so many like random certifications and stuff that I'm just like, where's the science for that? Like, where's like, like how does that make any sense? And just the clinical side couldn't answer it for me. And that's fine. That's awesome. It's still necessary and it's an incredible field, but I just wanted to understand like the underlying mechanisms, and I just wasn't getting that from clinical practice. And then I also just thought about like the humans, and I'm like, so you're just guessing with this person's rehab? Like, this is their livelihood, or this is like what gives them identity, and this is like what they love, and they're coming in here and spending money and spending time out of their day, and you're just like, let's put a heat pack on and then let's scrape it, and then you jump on the bike for 10 minutes and then we'll have you do clamshells and then they leave. I'm like, what? Like, that's so crazy to me. Like, it was just like baffling how that was my encounter with, I don't know, I would say like 85%. Of course, there's like the incredible practitioners that are think way outside of the box and think way outside of that. But that was just my experience with the majority of the field. And I just was like, I mean, that's never going to fly with me for the rest of my life. Like, I will burn out and I will hate my job if I do this forever. So I quickly realized that too. I was just like, I don't know. It's just, there's a lot of non-evidence based things that occur in like the allied health field. And I do agree that like your goal is player availability or patient availability. So if it means doing like placebo stuff, hell yeah, like let's do it. Like you want to get cupping on your quad and that's going to get you ready for Friday night, let's do it. No problem. But telling people maybe why or explaining and not kind of like hiding behind the shield of like, this is going to cure you. This is so good. Look at me. I'm so advanced. I'm an advanced practitioner using these fancy tools. That bothered me. And I was just like, that is like, I can't do that to my integrity. Like I'm not willing to get these certifications and promise people this and make myself look like I'm providing some revolutionary therapy when the evidence just does not support it. And I can't even the wires just don't link up in my brain. Like it doesn't make sense. So I was just like, I can't do that. Like I'm just not willing to do that. And that's also where I realized like, wait, I'm really curious. Maybe like there's something else that's still similar to this, but I can figure out like answers a lot of these like questions in my crazy brain. And that's again how I got into academia.
Yeah, I had this professor in grad school when I was doing my degree in just human physiology, and we were studying the cardiovascular system. And every class we would just draw mechanisms, and he would be like, and he would kind of just smirk at us and say, physiology is really just the science of arrows. And it
Yeah.
was like, this leads to this, leads to this, leads to this. And like now I teach my undergrads and my grad students, I'm like, let's talk about the mechanism of how we digest, absorb, like digest, absorb, metabolize carbohydrates, and how that gets into the bloodstream and increases skeletal muscle hypertrophy because it gives us power when glucose goes into the muscle. And I just arrow, 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 arrow. I'm like, this is what you need to know. But if there's like another intersecting arrow, which is like part of the process, now we'll talk about caffeine, now we'll talk about protein, we'll talk about, and it's like, I love like that point that you brought up with respect to like, if I can't see it, I'm not really buying in. I'm not really trusting it. And it's funny because if you go on like LinkedIn and Instagram and stuff and you see people, and if you have like loads and loads and loads of alpha, after your name with like this certification, this certification, this certification, it's like, all right, cool. Like you're working very hard and you want to learn and you want to help. And I'm like, at a certain point, like we can pretty much trust, some PTs and ATs and medical doctors and PhDs and stuff. But then it's like when you want to start throwing in the kitchen sink of, I don't know, red light therapy and sauna therapy and cupping and all this different stuff. And maybe there's a placebo, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But I can't also just buy into this like, oh, like our PT clinic or whatever is the best because we do and an Epsom salt bath and like, this worldly medicine. And I'm just like, yeah, like we know that diet, exercise, nutrition is important. And there's like some really time tested things. Give me those time tested things or variables and maybe leave out the rest. And
Yeah.
I feel like that was my similar thing. Like when I was a PT aide, I was 19 years old. I was like, oh, I'm going to be a PT. I'm going to be a PT. I just passed Orgo and physics and chem. And the PT I was working with goes, Mike, you're way too curious for this. Don't do this. And I was kind of like, oh, what do I do? I'm like, and I was like, hey, like that was the best advice I ever got at that point because I was like, yeah, I'm way too curious. I'm way too focused on performance. I wanted to zoom out so I could see the little teeny tiny things as opposed to just seeing the exact same sheet. Because I remember seeing like he would see 2 people per hour for 8 hours, and it was just like knee extensions,
Yeah.
like leg extensions, leg curls, like the serratus punches and all this different stuff. And he goes, yeah, we just give this mostly to everybody. And I was like, what? Like this
Yeah.
is ridiculous. I was like, come on, like so I don't know.
I know. I agree with you. And I think that, I mean, I can't say I think actually. I think it's more so the people I surround myself with and the PTs that I am friends with. They're amazing. And like, shout out to the people at Old Bull Physical Therapy. They are so awesome. And they do PT correctly and right. And like, that's how all PT should be. And so I don't know if it's just like my bubble that I've created that I'm like seeing like this new wave of PT and like it's becoming like what it should have always been. But at least those are the PTs I'm friends with. And I like if anybody listening to this needs connects or needs ideas, I'll give you all the follows and the emails and stuff. But there are a lot of people out there now that at least that I'm surrounded with that do it right. And like it's not just like table time and it's not just e-stim and heat packs and cold packs and ice tub and is ultrasound and whatever. Like that stuff is cool, but it's like a very, very small percentage of what actual physical therapy should be. But a lot of people stop learning after school, and
Oh yeah,
they
yeah.
get their degree and they're like, I learned how to do this. I know that if there's inflammation, I'm going to put E-stim and ice on it. And I know that if this happened, that's just what they do for the next 50 years. And like the science evolves and it's been evolving. And if you look at the research on these modalities, I teach in a modalities class, like a emergency response class. And a big chunk of the class is modalities. And I show them like the research that exists, like these big systematic reviews about ultrasound. And the conclusion is always like, well, ultrasound doesn't really do anything. Like it might, but it usually doesn't in comparison to exercise, and exercise intervention. And I'm just like, so overall, the consensus out of all of these like big papers, these big reviews, these big systematic reviews, the consensus is, well, it really maybe doesn't work, especially it's not superior to like conventional exercise. So then like why do we do it, right? Like why would you only do that? Like why, if we know the evidence is barely there and it's weak, why is that your first, the first straw you grab, like the first thing you do with like your client or your patient? I'm not saying don't do it. There's a time and a place. And maybe sometimes those are like an opportunity. It's like a little window that you can like open up to do more and to actually do the real exercise and the real stuff that works. So yes, that would be the like amazing time to use it. And so just knowing that, like knowing like, hey, I'm going to use massage and cupping as a window opportunity to like gain trust, get in there, and then actually get some adherence and have them do like the real stuff that's going to improve tissue tolerance and make them like better and actually create adaptations that will, fix their injury or whatever the case might be. So that's how I teach it, is like, hey, these things are not necessarily garbage, but they are not what's gonna, I mean, in my eyes, they kind of are, but they're not garbage, but there's a better way to use them than using them and masking them as like, this is going to fix your problem, this is going to fix your pain. Like no, use it as like again, that window of opportunity. Get in there, create some trust, make the patient feel good, and then hit them hard, right? And then actually create change and stimulus with the tissue. And so that's how I teach that, because it's trying to find the balance of like, I'm not going to bash these things because again, there's a place for them, but also this is kind of the place for them. Like it's very particular.
I wonder if, and this might seem like a stupid comment on my part, but I wonder if people from all of these different fields, maybe they do, maybe they don't, are introduced to one another. So as an example, I'm having like one of my best friends on the show like later this afternoon, and he's a medical doctor, and him and I grew up playing tennis, bodybuilding, the whole performance nutrition. We tried out protein shakes together when we were like 13, sort of deal. And like now I do research and I do performance, and he's a medical doctor, and he wants to make sure that people aren't dying of cardiometabolic disease. And I can't wait to talk about the bridge between research, clinical parts, and then like performance in the middle. And he really kind of sums all of it up pretty well. But then I know a ton of medical doctors who are brilliant with respect to just like keeping people alive, but they don't know anything about nutrition, and they don't know anything about research. They don't know anything about different measures. And then even some researchers don't know anything about nutrition or sleep. And I almost wish there was a way that everyone could get a little piece of the pie with regard for like, you can't just focus on this, you have to focus on everything else. Because
Yeah.
even like some athletic trainers I know who are brilliant with athletic training, they think that going to the gym and building muscle anything more than 1 or 2 days a week is overkill, because it's like, oh, then you could have a quad injury because if your quads get too strong, then that can lead to ACL injuries. And it's like, yeah, do you not want me to squat ever? Like, what about like the risk of sarcopenia and osteoporosis when I'm 60? Like, I should be axial loading, right? So it's like people don't always see it from one another's perspective, which is like why I wanted to create this show, because I'm like, let me see it from your perspective, because like I don't see it from everyone's perspective, and I don't know. I want people to see that, and I do that with my students too. I'm like, see it from this angle, this angle, this angle, this angle, and this angle, and maybe you'll be a better practitioner, researcher, teacher, whatever.
Yeah. No, I have two thoughts. I have like, you don't know until you know, right? And so like I used to also think, like, I remember in undergrad, oh, if you round your back, you're gonna hurt your back. Like, don't round your back, right? But then you get exposed to other way smarter people and you're like, wait, whoa, you can round your back. Like you should round your back. You should train that. You should train spinal flexion, extension, rotation, lateral flexion, whatever, right? You should train it all, like, instead of avoiding it. And I just remember it's like that Dunning-Kruger effect, right? Have you seen
Yeah,
that? Like,
yeah.
it's exactly that. It's like, wow, I don't know anything. And then all of a sudden you learn a thing or two. And I'm just like, don't bend your back. Like, it's bad for you. I know so much. And then somebody says, like, no, you're wrong. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know anything. Um, and so I think that happens a lot, and I think we just have to be open to it. Like, it's like a gut check to your ego when it first happens, but then you can, like, either, get defensive and be like, I know everything, I'm doubling down, or you can be like, wow, this person has a lot more experience and they know a lot more than me. They're right, or they might be right. Like, let me look into this, and then, like, learn and become a better practitioner, clinician, professor, researcher, whatever you might be. So that is my first thought. And then my second thought is that learning how to, I guess, another, like, humble pie is learning how to outsource things that you might not be the best at. Like, sure, you might be a medical doctor and you might not know everything about nutrition, and your job might not be to know everything about nutrition. Like, you don't want to be a jack of all trades that can kind of do a little bit of everything, but you kind of suck at a little bit of everything, but you can do a lot. Or your other option is to be really freaking good at your job and know when to, like, refer people, right? To, like, okay, you probably need a registered dietitian. Let's send you to that person. Or you probably need to see the orthopedic surgeon, or you need to see a really good PT, or you need to see XYZ. Like, let's, like, building this community of, like, practitioners and a really solid referral system, I think can really change the game. Because I feel like a lot of people try to wear all the hats, and that's awesome, myself included. Like, I feel like I want to be the rehab person, I want to be the strength person, I want to be the nutritionist. Like, we try to wear all these hats, myself included, and forget that there are people that have dedicated their entire life to just one of these hats. And, like, maybe those are the people that we should be trusting with the more advanced cases. And so I don't know. I think being open to learning from other people and then creating, like, this system of, like, referrals to the right people could just really change the healthcare game, instead of being like, I have to know everything. I have to know everything about medicine. I have to know everything about nutrition. I have to know, like, I don't know. I think you should maybe aim to be more of, like, an expert in your field and then refer out, like, accordingly. So there's like a weird little mesh there that, yeah.
Yeah, they call that what, the law of comparative advantage, like basically stay in your lane.
Yeah,
So
right,
it's
right.
like I'm not going to try and, I don't know, like I shave my head, but like I'm not going to try and cut my own hair, right? Because it's like I'm like really bad at that. So it's like I will pay someone to cut my hair, even though I just like shave it. But yeah, it's funny. My older brother and my best friend are like financial, like, advisors and planners. So they tell me what to do with my money.
Yeah,
And I am a exercise science professor, so I tell them how to exercise and how to eat. And
yeah,
it's like I'm like, we just get on a call, like money, food, and like we
yeah,
don't intersect. And anytime they're like, "Hey, I heard about this keto thing," I'm like, "Yeah, maybe that's not for you," and we'll just leave it at that. Like, maybe it's not for you. We'll leave it at that, and like that's all good.
yeah.
Um,
I
and I
agree.
do think that some, like, doctors and clinicians, like, very rightfully so, need to refer out.
Yeah.
I remember I went to the ER like one of the times and I couldn't see out of my left eye, and it ended up being like some weird optical migraine.
Interesting.
And like I went to the ER and the doctor was like, "All right, what's up?" I was like, "I can't see out of my left eye." He started looking at it. He goes, "Let me call like the ophthalmologist on staff." And like, cool. So he referred out and like they told me like it's going to go away in 15, 20 minutes. And it came back, and I ended up having like a torn retina like later on. It's just odd. But yeah, it's that idea of staying in your lane is huge.
Yeah.
And with respect to, like, I guess, like, your research and your interests, what how has your views changed on maybe things that you have researched or want to research, or maybe you had a research idea and you threw it out? Because we talked about, your MyoRep study and skeletal muscle hypertrophy and performance. So what's that kind of look like for you? Like, have you ever like gone 90% and be like, well, maybe not, this has been disproved, or I used to think this, now I'm changing it to this?
All the time. All the time I get proven wrong, and I love it. Like, I love that's, like, the coolest part about science is, like, you'll always feel dumb for the rest of your life. And it's a humbling experience, but I think it's the best way, one, to build character, and two, to, like, actually advance yourself in the field. And I feel like it's not for the faint of heart because people are telling you you're wrong all the time. I mean, simply like you write up a paper, you submit it, and you're like, this is amazing. And then you get like reviewer feedback, and it's just like, this is wrong. This is an old citation. This sucks. Like, more about this. And you're just like, oh my God, I'm so dumb. So, yes, all the time. My ideas are changing, and I'm just like, I mean, even like a podcast I might have done a year ago, I've like re-listened to and I'm like, oh, I can't believe I said that. Like, I can't believe I thought that. Like, that's so embarrassing. That's on the internet forever. But I mean, that's the beauty of science. And I think owning it is way more advantageous and it's better for the field than doubling down and being like, no, that's what I believe. And I've always said that. And so that's what I'm going to stick to. Like you can't be proven wrong, which you totally can. So I had like random thoughts about like the whole effective reps thing and like these theories and muscle hypertrophy, and just like the more I learn the less I know, and like I realized that wait a second, like it's really not that simple, and um there's so much left to learn. And so I'm always like, yeah, I might have said that and I don't believe it anymore. And um it's changing, right? Like, I mean, we always used to think, oh, lactic acid this, lactic acid that. But now we know, okay, there's no lactic acid. It's lactate, hydrogen ions, right? It's all these like acidic processes happening. There's no buildup of lactic acid. Like the world is changing. And yes, I probably like years ago said, oh, lactic acid buildup, blah, blah, blah. But like owning it and being like, wait, that was wrong. I was wrong. And the science has evolved. That's the only way to be about it. And so, yes, my ideas are always changing, my philosophies are always changing, and I'll always own it if I'm wrong because in science you're wrong like 99% of the time anyway. So, yes, all the time.
There was I think like two things. I made this YouTube video when I was doing my PhD because I was like, oh, like I'm doing my PhD, like I'm so smart. And then I felt like I came out of my PhD not knowing more than when I first started because I was like, oh, I am humbled. And but I made this YouTube video. I think it's still on my YouTube channel called like why you need to eat every 3 hours.
Yeah.
And it's so cringe. It was from 2019, and I was like, yeah, like speed up your metabolic rate. And it's like if you know what metabolism is, it's just the sum of anabolism and catabolism. So if you walk around more and you burn off more calories and you happen to eat more, metabolic rate goes up. But if you have 2,000 calories a day, it doesn't matter if you have it once or you have it 5 separate times. And I was like, okay, so I was not me, but like science was disproving that's okay. And the second thing is like, if you remember BCAAs, like that was the hottest thing in the streets of like, oh, like take BCAAs to increase skeletal muscle protein synthesis all day long. And now we're seeing it's like 24-hour muscle protein synthesis is a big thing, but if you just spike it every 3 to 4 hours, you're going to cap out and reach your leucine threshold. You don't need to have it all the same time or throughout the day and have like that muscle full effect. And it's not like I was wrong. It's just like science was wrong. And it's cool because we progress, but like now I need to stop telling my friends to take BCAAs. Like it's an honest thing. I will tell you.
Totally. No, it's humbling, but it's so awesome because I mean, we all are like obsessed with like our ego and being right, and I see it all the time where like new data comes out and somebody who's built a whole business and a whole persona around like this idea and thought, they just like can't believe it, and they double down on their like disproven philosophies and theories because they have just like commercialized this idea, and it's almost like too late to turn around. So I always remind myself like you got to be careful with like one, what you monetize, and two, just like being so like holding on to those ideas so tightly because they change so much, and you just have to be willing to learn and adapt because you're going to be proven wrong and people are going to hate what you say, and you're going to post something or publish something or write something, and in a couple years you're going to be like, this is stupid, you're dumb, you don't know anything, and you just have to own it and be like, you know what, back then I didn't, but now I know a little more, so thank you. And it's interesting when you talked about like the mechanisms and arrows. I forgot to remind like to say this, but when like there is like a mechanism, there's also like a billion other things happening at the same time. And so when I teach this, I'm always like, we're looking at the net outcome, right? We're not just looking at like the one mechanism that's happening right now, like we're drawing the arrows, right? There's like a billion other things happening at the same time. So what is the net outcome when you sum all of these reactions, like what is the net positive or net negative or unchanged, right? And that's what we care about. Like that's what actually matters, because you can argue mechanisms all day and there's going to be another one that someone else brings up and is like, oh, but this is happening. And then someone else is going to be like, oh, but this is also happening. But at the end of the day, what matters is like, what is the net outcome? Like plus minus a billion times over, what is the final product? And that's like in performance, at least, that's what we care about. Because again, you can argue mechanisms all day, but at the end of the day, what's happening? Like everyone's loves to talk about like, oh, I mean, in the nutrition world, like, don't eat this, it's got this chemical. Don't eat this, it's got this. Like, don't eat, what is it? Like apples have cyanide and rice has this and that. Don't eat that. Like, okay, but like that's one of the tiny, like that's like one tiny, aspect of eating an apple. Like then you also have fiber and water and other micronutrients, right? So like at the end of the day, once you run the numbers and you do the math, the final net product is positive, right? It's good. Eat the apple. Like, and so that's how I try to explain it to my classes. You can't just get hung up on one thing that you hear because it's true, but there's also a million other things happening, and what matters is the final consensus. So yes, I don't know where we're going with this conversation, but
No,
when you
that's great. I love that because it's like I thought about this Bill Nye video that I saw recently. He was on like Men's Health. Like the man's like, I don't know, 70, and he looks amazing. Like he hasn't aged since we were like in middle school.
That's
And like the
awesome.
teacher would like roll in the TV, be like, "All right, we're watching Bill Nye today." I'm like, "Nice, watching Bill Nye."
Yeah,
Like I
yeah,
love that dude, and he looks exactly the same.
that's
And they were talking about his like what he does now and how he exercises and how he eats. And he was like in his kitchen and he's wearing like a bow tie and he's just like eating a bowl of fruit and he's like, "Eat the fruit." He's like, it's high in fructose and antioxidants and fiber. Fruit's good for you. It's not like candy. And I was like, thank you, Bill Nye, for saying that. Cause yeah, people get hung up on these things. And even too, I always talk about the definition of an organic compound. Like an organic compound contains a carbon and a hydrogen bond. So it doesn't matter if you're buying apples at Trader Joe's or at Walmart or at Aldi, everything you eat is going to be organic. So it's fine. It's just like how it's like prepared, I guess. But yeah, there's so many like nuances. And I feel like it's almost like up to us, like the honest scientist, to be like, hey, like this is what we know so far from the evidence. This is what the evidence points to. But like there could be other data out there, which I'm not accustomed to. But like in general, we know cigarette smoking's bad and eating apples is good.
yeah.
Check the data, it's out there. But like with respect to different fat burners and test boosters, like who knows? I would like to see some evidence, but I would err on the side of caution, maybe not do that sort of thing.
Yeah. No, totally. You can't speak in absolutes. And that's another thing I tell people, my family and my friends is, if anybody's ever speaking in absolutes, immediate red flag. Like you have to just tread with caution because nothing is really absolute. And depending on the context, the answer is always, it depends. And my husband makes fun of me because he's always like, oh, don't ask her a question because she's just going to say it depends and she's going to go off on a tangent. But it's the truth. Like, if you ask me, like, should I eat Skittles? Well, it depends. Like, are you an athlete who didn't have time to have breakfast? Are you running a super long distance and that's the only like palatable, those are the only palatable calories you can get down? Or are you overweight trying to lose weight, and monitoring your calories and intake, and maybe you just do like moderate exercise? Well, the answer for both of those is going to be completely different. So you can't just say Skittles are bad. Well, like in what context, right? So it's just like the battle of my life trying to explain some of these concepts. Sometimes it's just like I can't say that like this candy is good or bad, and I can't tell you if this is like, there's no, it always depends. Like it just always depends.
Do you, because I feel like a lot of us are the exact same way. Like my older brother made the mistake of asking me why he should stop eating low fat Cheez Its because he was trying to like lose some weight. And I was like, dude, stop eating low fat Cheez Its. And I went on this tangent about fiber and protein and like complex carbs versus simple carbs. And he's like, can you just tell me? I'm like, I'm telling you right now. But like in my head, there's like a million things happening. Do you find that too, that that's like your blessing and your curse at the same time? That there's almost like, there's so much going on. And then like for me personally, like I have to run every day to like quiet down the noise. Do you have a very similar phenomenon?
Yes to the like million thoughts in your head when someone asks you a question. I want to like cover all the bases because that's what I would want. I would want somebody to tell me everything that I need to know about the one topic so then I can make my own decision. But I have to realize that not everybody is like that. And most people just want you to tell them the answer. And so like removing the jargon, removing everything else and just focusing on what's like applicable and important and making it simple is the way to do it. But I'm actually not the best at that. And so yeah, quieting that like crazy noise in my head is very difficult, and I try to deliver things easier by asking just like the context first, and then I can give them the answer, but then reminding them that that answer doesn't work for everybody. Like, I don't know, like my mom is just like, hey, I want to lose weight, should I eat quinoa or rice? And I'm like, okay, context dependent, but for you, let's go with quinoa.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, I just always ask about the context first, and I always say context dependent, so don't go giving people this advice as well, but for you, this is what I would do. That's kind of how I try to like narrow it down. And then the exercise thing, yes and no. So I don't feel myself if I don't exercise consistently. I just like feel out of whack. And I don't know if that's so much like a like physiological thing or just something that I've built into like my lifestyle where like I can't, like it's just part of a habit, like right, like you need to go, like you have to eat every day or else you feel like shit, right? For me, I have to like exercise every day or else I don't feel good. um and I don't know, yeah, I don't know how much of it is like mental and how much of it is like actually a necessity. So I do, because if I don't set a goal, I will not show up consistently. Like I will just be like, I don't really have to go today. I have a lot of other things on my mind. When I'm stressed, working out doesn't relieve my stress. It actually like sometimes makes it worse. And thinking about like an extra thing to do is, I hate thinking about exercise like that too. And I tell people all the time, it's not a chore, right? But sometimes when I have a lot on my plate, it feels like a chore. So that's why for me, setting a goal is monumental because I have something to work for. So it's not necessarily a chore. It's like I will meet this goal. I will meet this deadline. So like I have to go. And if I don't have that, then I'm always like, it's easy for me to make an excuse and be like, like I got other things to do today. I'd rather hang out with my family. I'd rather do this. I'd rather do that. But if I treat it almost like another like job or requirement, it gets me there. And I know that that's what I need to be like my best self, right? And so, yeah, I don't know. I think knowing yourself is really important, and like kind of being in tune with what you need can help you figure out what is best for you specifically. So yeah, I can relate.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. I feel vindicated on that
Yeah.
one. So what do you have on the horizon with your research now, your research interest? What can you talk about? What can
Yeah.
you like drop as like a little preview? What do you
Yeah.
got?
I have been diving pretty deeply into the sport nutrition world. I love hypertrophy and resistance training, but if there's one thing I learned is that training studies are so incredibly difficult to conduct. The logistics, it's like babysitting college kids in the gym. It is incredibly difficult, and without the right team and equipment, it's nearly impossible. And I don't really have the right team or equipment right now at my university. So it makes it really difficult to do resistance training specific studies, kind of how I did for my dissertation. So I've had to pivot just a little for the time being. Do I see myself going back to that? Hell yeah, I do. Like I would love to build. I don't know if you saw Jeff Nippard's like recent post about the lab he built. I would
Yeah,
love,
we all secretly love him and hate him for it
yeah,
because we
like
spent 10 years
yeah,
doing what he just did from YouTube money. Like I love that
totally.
dude.
Totally. Like I would kill for that because I could do everything. I could do all my
Yeah.
resistance stuff. I'll have so many resistance training ideas. Like I have a list of things I want to do and like different collabs and multi-site stuff. I just need the proper equipment, the proper lab. So if anybody wants to build me that, that'd be great. Um,
You gotta
but
invest in macro factor.
yeah, please listen. So honestly, kudos to the people that one have the resources and two can crank out these like Dr. Schoenfeld and all like the squad over there in New York, all of their training studies. I can't even imagine the logistics. You have to just have a powerhouse team and incredible grad students to be running all these like in-person like training studies. So difficult. And having done it, I have so much respect when I read a paper and I see like, okay, this was a training study. Wow, like this was hard to pull off. So I learned a lot. And as much as I want to keep doing those, I just don't have the capacity currently. So that's definitely on the back burner, but it's not over. Like I definitely want to keep, doing the resistance training stuff. Right now, what I'm focusing on is I have a big magnesium project, magnesium L-threonate, kind of like a concoction by Magtein. Just some of the like rodent model stuff shows that it, when it's paired together like that, it crosses the blood brain barrier, and so it kind of affects cognition in a better sense, improves sleep better than just like your average magnesium, all the other different kinds of magnesium. So that's what I'm working on right now, and I got a grant from our school for that. So that's the latest project, is looking at magnesium cognition slash performance. We'll look at like some counter movement jump stuff, some sleep stuff, some like cognitive testing, mental fatigue stuff. So that's really like my biggest project right now. And then other like side quests with like other collaborators with resistance training stuff. And yeah, those are like the main projects right now.
I'm excited to hear about the magnesium because
Yeah.
that's one of the minerals that's hot in the streets right now with
Yeah.
threonate and glycinate, and
Yeah.
people realizing that it's not only great for muscle relaxation, it can help you sleep better, and like the cognition piece. Like I don't know if like Huberman did a podcast, but like now it's the hottest thing, and I love
Yeah.
that idea of like if we can reduce systemic and like neuronal inflammation, then that just filters out through the entire body, and we feel better, we think better, it's amazing. So it's like magnesium is really like the utility player, like the shortstop who does everything, and it's like, all right, like let's see what we can do. So I'm really excited to follow in with magnesium. That's one of those on like my macro factor app. When I look in my micronutrients, I look at like my obviously protein, but I look at like sodium, potassium, magnesium. I look at vitamin D, and I'm like, all right, like what am I getting? And magnesium's now on my radar. So I'll be really
Yeah.
pumped to keep going with following you what you're doing with magnesium.
Thanks. I'm excited. And I think supplements get a bad rep, and I don't think that they're here to save the world and supplements are amazing. Actually, a lot of the supplement research I've done finds no effect, and you're just like, okay, it really does nothing. Or it only does something for people who are already in a deficit or people who are in a nutrient deficiency or whatever. So yeah, the hype around supplements is a little cuckoo. I think knowing when and how to use them and knowing that they are exactly that, a supplement to your already awesome, hopefully, diet. But a lot of people don't have an awesome diet. And so that's why like these things can supplement some of those like nutritional holes that they have. And or there are things that we just naturally can't produce. I wouldn't say enough, but the optimal amount, right? Practical and optimal are two different kind of
Oh yeah,
stories, right? Like we can't like produce the optimal amount if you're an athlete.
can versus should.
Yeah, exactly. Like something like creatine, right? You don't need to take creatine. At least like if we're talking about performance, not cognition, which cognition is a whole different ballpark now with creatine, but you don't have to take it for performance, right? You have some naturally, you produce it naturally, you can eat it like via protein, great. But if you want like the optimal, that extra 1, 2, 3% needle gauge movement in positive performance, it's in your best interest to take it because you just simply can't eat enough of it or produce enough of it to saturate your stores. And if you're an athlete of almost any sort, you would want maximal storage saturation of creatine, right? So it's kind of like, again, like it depends. Like I'm not going to sit here and say supplements are amazing. Like no, a lot of the research I even do and see is like it didn't do anything, but that's still research. Like that still tells us and informs our decisions. But then like in those specific scenarios, there like is a time and a place for it. Like, again, like creatine and then protein supplementation. Like, yeah, I explain this to my students, especially the undergrads, because they will often be like, well, what about protein? Like, like the crazy questions about protein. Is it a steroid or crazy stuff like that? I don't know. I always explain to them, like, imagine a chicken breast and then you turn it into dust. That's what protein is. And so sometimes some people can't consume a chicken breast. Maybe they don't like it. Maybe they don't have access to it. Maybe it's just they can't fit it into their schedule. And so they decide to turn it into dust and drink it as chocolate instead. And in some cases, it's necessary. Some cases, again, time restraints, resources, access, whatever your specific situation might be, maybe it does call for protein, like powder supplementation, right? So I don't know. Like supplements are again one of those like dicey topics that some people hate them, some people love them. I think it's again context dependent. So
I love that. I want to keep this thing going, but I gotta head out. Where can people find you? Your contact information if
Instagram
you would like to be
usually.
contacted.
Yeah, no, contact me. That's fine. I love it. I love it. I'm a talker, as you can tell. Instagram is usually where I'm the most active. I have a LinkedIn. I don't go on there every day, so people will send me like something and I take forever to reply. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I don't really have Twitter. I made one, but I don't use it. I don't follow anybody. I never use it. So yeah, Instagram.
Instagram, awesome. I'll link it down in the show notes. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was awesome. We'll have to do this again and get
Oh,
some more updates on your magnesium studies and all the strength and conditioning stuff. So we finished up for today, but thanks so much for coming on, Antonella.
thanks for having me. That was fun.
Yeah, for sure.